Hello, world. This is America's Supermom, and this is a special edition that I call the Corona Chronicles. During this time, we are suffering from a pandemic that is affecting everyone across the world. We are joined with the rules and regulations of being shelter in place, which means we are limited with the ability to go about our daily business, confined to our homes based on a coronavirus that has been sweeping the entire world. For some people, the effects could be mild. For others, it can be fatal. So we are coming together as a community, as a family during this time of difficulty to share what it is like in our part of the world, how we are affected, and the things that we have in common, what kind of problems that are taking place in our industries and in our relationships and finances, and coming together so that we can plan for a better tomorrow. As this epidemic or pandemic crosses the world, we are waiting for relief. We're waiting for the virus to die off and for us to go back to some state of normalcy, whatever that may be, after things kind of settle down. So, what is that going to look like once the dust settles? How are things going to be different? So, as we go through this process, we're coming together as a world to create ideas, strategies, connect in ways that we have never connected before. So, that is the purpose of the special podcast that I call the Corona Chronicles, so that we can get some insight and have empathy and compassion on one another, create new innovative ideas that can not only improve our life, but our fellow brothers and sisters across the world. Thank you so much for joining us.
My name is LaQuita Parks, and I am in Riverdale, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I am also the founder and facilitator of a Failure to Communicate mentoring programs.
Mm-hmm.
I am also an author, a published author
Mm-hmm.
of um, five books,
Mm-hmm.
one being a children's book, a new children's book.
Awesome.
And I am a mother of three adult children and one beautiful, beautiful 1-year-old grandson. He
Oh,
is the joy of my life. Um, on top of that, my most proudest is I am a child of the living God.
amen. Amen.
So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So I am really glad that you were able to be here today, and we connected through Facebook. So I
Yes.
always like to encourage my audience to just reach out to people because you never know, who that person is on the other end of Facebook. You can make some great acquaintances. So
Yes.
glad we were able to collaborate today. So I love the idea of you being a mentor around communication. I think right now during this pandemic, that is something that is definitely key in order for us to think about how the media communicates, how we communicate in our homes with our family. A very good topic to kind of dive into. So, how was it that you got into communication?
Well, I believe I've always been a communicator. Sometimes we communicate ineffectively,
Mm-hmm.
and a long time ago, I used to get people all the time to come and how you have friends and let me get let me ask you a question. Let me get your thoughts on this, and it always seemed to be surrounding relationships. And I would find myself saying, well, did you ask? I go, what do you mean? Well, you're upset with somebody or somebody's upset with you, did you ask? Or
Mhm.
did you talk to them? And it would be like a foreign concept. Like,
Mhm.
no. Well, how do you know what the other person is feeling or thinking if you don't communicate with them? If you
Mhm.
don't ask, you got to start with a simple question. So I started, working with adults, couples on, effective communication, and then it kind of transferred to working with young people. So that's how I kind of got started. And then I just kind of took it to another level,
That is.
started creating programs and creating activities, fun activities, because
Mhm.
especially when you're dealing with couples, they don't really want to, talk. Women are talkers, men are not really talkers.
Mhm.
Um, you started when you start doing fun things that can kind of strengthen relationships, and then people kind of get involved. So I just kind of took it to a whole different level. So I got through doing that, and then kind of adopted some or developed some strategies for young people as well. So
I love that. Now, so you brought up a key thing about a lot of people not asking. So we
mhm.
make assumptions and we don't ask. So, what would you think is the reason why a lot of people don't ask? Do you think they don't know how, or there's some kind of confidence issue with it? What do you find is true when it comes to people not asking?
I think a little bit of both. I think
Mm-hmm.
there is the confidence issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll use myself as an example.
Okay.
As I grew up, I went through a lot. I was crippled as a child. I was given a shot of penicillin in my sciatic nerve. It
Mm-hmm.
pulsed a bone in my leg, and I became crippled. I've had about 15 surgeries, and it has led to a lot of medical diagnosis, a lot of pain. So I was to say I was a shy child would be an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be seen. I was in school. I didn't want the teacher to call on me. I didn't want to be heard. So I was quiet, very withdrawn. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was shy, so I didn't want to ask anything because I didn't want anybody to look at me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I became older, you would not think that I was the same child, but as I got older, I didn't like to ask people things. I'm a peacemaker, and I still am. I like
Mhm,
peace, and
mhm,
I am was very reluctant to ask because I didn't want to be told no. And to
mm,
me, no, I can't, and no, I don't want to, or no, I'm not able to is still no.
mm,
So I think sometimes people are afraid of what the result might be. They're
mm,
afraid to hear the truth. And see, as long as I don't hear the truth, as long as I don't know the truth, then I don't
mhm,
have to face it. I don't have to deal with it. In my
right,
relationship, if as long as I keep my head buried and I'm going along with the status quo of my household and everybody
mhm,
seems to be happy, I don't have to address it. I can
mm,
put a band-aid on that stud missile wound and I can ignore it. But if
mhm,
I have to address it, that means I have to deal with it. And a lot of people don't want to do that. However,
mhm,
here's the flip side. Once you deal with it, once you get it out, once you
mhm,
uncover it, once you unbury it, so to speak,
mhm.
then you can deal with it, and then you can heal from whatever it might be.
I love that. I love that. I use the analogy sometimes where if you have a Band-Aid on your skin and you need to put some medicine right on the wound, it won't work if you try to put it on top of the Band-Aid because it's never
Absolutely.
get there. So
Absolutely.
that is awesome. Now, so you mentioned growing up with this mindset of being withdrawn and shy. So, what pivotal moment took place in order for you to make that transition from not asking the questions and trying to disappear to begin to seeing yourself and using your voice?
It's amazing. I had a rude awakening.
Mm-hmm.
I am, as I mentioned earlier, I am the mother of three adult children. Well, single mother. I was
Mm-hmm.
married, and I went through a really, really ugly divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I raised, my children, and my ex-husband didn't, do those things that he was supposed to do. And
Mhm.
it was me and the children against the world. It was,
Mm.
one of me and three of them. And they
Mhm.
were my responsibility. They were my,
Mhm.
and I took that seriously from day one. They were my
Mhm.
responsibility. So it was my responsibility to protect them. And
Mm.
I had to become their voice. And I
Mm.
decided one day, one Saturday, we went to the store, and I would always cower down, and I would always kind of go inwardly, and
Mhm.
not cause try not to cause any issues. I was, again, didn't have a voice. Well,
Mhm.
that Saturday, it was a Saturday, I remember it clearly. That Saturday something hit me, and I had to realize that I had to be their voice. They were
Mm.
children, and they were counting on me to be their voice. So that day, I had a rude awakening. There was an incident that happened, and I had to become a tiger. I had to become a
Mm.
tiger, a lion, mama bear, whatever you want to call
Mm.
it. I
Mhm.
had to stand up, and I had to become I was a victim. I was a victim. I behaved
Mhm.
like a victim. I cowered down
Mhm.
like a victim. But that day, I decided that I no longer wanted to be a victim. And my
Mm.
children deserved the voice. They deserved
Mhm.
somebody to stand up for them, somebody to fight for them. And I became
Mm.
that person. So I did it for them because I had
Mm.
to, because I was their mother, and they deserved that. But as
Mhm.
they grew older, I started thinking, okay, I need to do this for me. So
Mm.
I became that person who people could come and talk to, and I also became that person to not allow people to run over me. People will only treat you the way you allow them to treat you.
Mm.
So
That's a good one.
I became the person that, okay, you know what, I am, and anybody who knows me, they will
Mhm.
pretty much say the same thing. She's nice, she's a good person.
Mhm.
I will give you the shirt off my back, and won't worry about it because I'm a thrifter. I can go to the store and get another shirt for 50 cents.
Amen.
So I don't
Amen.
care.
Me
I don't
too.
care about shirts. I don't care about stuff. But
Right.
I also want people to know that, you know what, when you come at me, you got to come at me correct. I don't do yelling and
Mm.
screaming and cursing. I don't do any of that. But
Mhm.
I articulate well, and I don't do it for anybody else, but I do it because I want you to see me and treat me as a human being, because
Mhm.
treat you as a human being, and
Mhm.
also going to teach you how to treat me. that
Mhm.
that's the thing with communicating. Sometimes people don't know how to treat people, and
Mhm.
sometimes people don't know how to teach people how to treat them.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, you brought up some key things. I mean, we probably could do a whole podcast on that, some of those items. But now, so for somebody who is at that place to where, they're just coming out of their shell, they want to communicate, what are some warning signs or certain things that kind of show you that you may be avoiding the truth, so to speak? You know what I mean? Like certain habits that pre speaking up you would do, whereas after speaking up you kind of notice there's a difference. Does that question make sense?
It does. It does.
Okay.
There are one of the warning signs. For instance, if you're having a conversation with someone,
Mhm.
and they initiate that, that's the most important thing for me. I look for those, those ends, so to speak. So
Mhm.
it's an initiation. If somebody initiates a conversation, and you kind of tend to start down that line and say some things, and they don't quite want to hear it, they start interjecting,
Mm.
and you can't complete your thought,
Mm.
or they've asked you a question, or you're saying something. For instance, I had a conversation with a young lady, and I said, what are you doing during this time to get through this pandemic?
Mhm.
And she said, I sleep. And okay, and I'm listening, and what else are you doing? and I don't want a deal. I don't want a deal.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, well, here are some things that I do. And when I started saying those things, then there was the interjection.
Mhm.
There was the, well, I know I don't. So when that happens, I just kind of start withdrawing in conversation and just start listening
Mhm.
because that person isn't ready
Mhm.
to uncover or as you put it, take that band-aid off
Mhm.
to put the medicine in.
Mhm.
That's one. When you start getting resistance where that person totally starts to withdraw,
Mm.
doesn't want to have a conversation, doesn't want to talk, they have to get off the phone or they end the communication, and it's difficult for you to reach out to them.
Mhm.
They're not ready.
Okay.
Uh, when you're communicating with the person and the tone starts to change,
Mhm.
that they're not ready. And even with myself, when I start seeing those things, and the first rule of thumb is to examine self.
Amen.
I examine myself to see if I'm being too preachy,
Mhm.
if I'm being too judgmental,
Mhm.
if I'm being, if my tone is one of condescending, if I'm,
Mhm.
or I'm being, um, kind of laxy daisy,
Mhm.
or even where I am not actively listening. So
Mhm.
when if I'm listening to you, I am not preparing my response in my head before you finish what you have to say.
Right.
So if I'm listening to you, I'm taking in everything that you're saying. I've had people to say, you're not listening, and I said, I am. I'm listening. I can, do you want me to run back everything that you said? Because I can.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's like, okay, no, you don't have to do that. So those are some kind of major, some kind of
Mhm.
major things when communicating and when you're trying to help people go from being the victim to the survivor.
Mhm.
And sometimes people are not ready. And I've said to people, um, you're not the victim. Don't play the victim
Mhm.
because you have a part in it. Because sometimes too, it's important that we have to see our part in it.
Mhm.
What role did I play in this?
Right.
Even in my marriage, when things, went bad, and I like to say he was the whole 100% of the problem.
Mhm.
I still have to look at myself and say, okay, there was a role that you played in this.
Mhm.
So we're not all 100% innocent,
Mhm.
and we're not all 100% guilty.
Mhm. So.
So we have to be honest in communicating. And it starts with communicating with ourselves. What role did I play in this?
Mhm. Mhm. And this is so true. So, you're able to I love the fact that you say you can face this truth and deal with it because, we all have our shortcomings of things that we might not have done well. I look back on my story and, I had resentment towards my kids, my husband. I was blaming them because I was a victim, right? I'm going
Mm-hmm,
around
mm-hmm,
like it's a badge. Oh, yeah, I was in the hospital. You know what I mean? Crazy.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
glad to be on the other side. But for somebody who is going through this whole thing of feeling like, communication is a hard thing right now, they are, um, I think it's just the whole thing of trying to manage your feelings and communicate them effectively. So, we have uncertainty with, people's jobs. Right now, they may be transitioning temporarily and then they don't know if their job is going to be around anymore, or they're dealing with their kids at home when they're not used to that being a reality. So what tips would you tell somebody to kind of um, be actively conscious about good ways to communicate in order to kind of not make some of the frustrations worse than what they can be? Does that make sense?
Uh, it does.
Mhm.
So one thing, first thing is, there's a slogan or a phrase that I adopted or borrowed
Mm.
that I turned from a friend, and it says, "There is nothing wrong in you that a change in me won't fix."
Mm.
Looking at myself first before I start um, going down that road of communicating. Um, there is, sometimes we see the bad in people,
Mhm.
and we don't see, we don't tend to see the good in them, and it's actually the way that we see them. It's nothing really wrong with them. It's just the way that we view it.
Mhm.
So starting there, and then going from a point of, with the person that you're communicating with or trying to help them to heal. It's actually helping them to realize where they are versus where they want to be,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and even where they came from. Because some people are there, like you mentioned, you were playing the victim, you were blaming other people.
Mhm.
I can relate to that,
Mhm.
because even with my issues, I've gone from one part of a diagnosis to another part of diagnosis, and I have people who love me. I have an amazing support circle,
Mhm.
but sometimes I get in that nobody loves me, nobody cares.
Mhm.
And my son would say a closed mouth won't get fed. And I'm like, boy, I raised you. Where'd you get that from? But having to know that where you are now is not where you're gonna be, and where you are now is not where you were. So
Mhm.
having them to look at where they are and look at the progress they've made.
Mhm.
Sometimes it might be baby steps. It might seem like you're crawling, but even a crawling baby gets from point A to point B.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
helping them to realize that, number one, there's nothing wrong in you that a change in me won't fix. So looking at how you see the other person. Number two, letting them see and understand that where you are now is not where you're gonna be, and where
Mhm.
you are now is not where you've been. There's been progress. Celebrate the progress,
Mhm. Yep.
and understanding that not everybody is where you are.
Mm.
Take people where they are and go from there.
Mm.
So I am. I'm on the other end of the communication.
Mhm.
I've learned how to communicate effectively. I've learned some of the do's and don'ts, and I'm not perfect, because I still sometimes we still, in everything that we do, we can still slide back into that thinking.
Right.
But when you know what the tools are, you know how to bring yourself out of that,
Mhm.
and bring yourself out quickly. So
Mhm.
also knowing that, okay, you know what, this person isn't where I am, so I cannot expect them to get it like I get it.
Mhm.
So taking them where they are and helping them to go to that next level. And the last thing is also realizing and accepting the fact that some people just don't want to move.
Mm. That's a good one.
They don't want to move. And
Mhm.
no matter what you say, no matter what you do, they are in denial. It's
Mhm.
not them, it's everybody else. And
Mhm.
they are satisfied with being in that bubble.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
even Jesus told the disciples, when you go out to preach my word, if they don't want to hear it, knock the feet, not kick the dust off your feet and keep moving.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's hard for us, because sometimes we want to fix people, and I'm like that.
Mhm.
I want so much for people. Sometimes I see the good in person, and I see the potential. I used to do that with my children. I
Mhm.
see your potential. I have your potential. I know that you can do this. I'm not sure. I used to have this thing with my children. I used to say, I work with a lot of young people, and
Mhm.
and adults. I don't know what their history is. I don't know
Mhm.
what this child's, upbringing was. I don't
Mhm.
know what this child went through, but I know what you went through. I know
Mhm.
who your parents are. I know what type of parent I was. I,
Mhm.
so all of this foolishness that you got going on, I know that you know better. you know so you got to know, you got to take them where they are, and
Mhm.
know that some people just don't want to move, and you got to give it time. And if they don't, you kind of, you don't, I've learned not to kind of dwell. There's so much to be done. You don't
Mhm.
abandon people either, but at
Yeah.
some point you have to get to a point to say, you know what, okay, there are so many other people who deserve my help. Let
Mm,
me move on. And,
mhm,
visit. Don't abandon completely, but you revisit.
mhm,
Put your all into it like but move on and recognize that, they're not ready. Not
mhm, mhm. I love that because as a coach, a lot of people who may be listening, they are in that point where it's like, you go through phases even with coaching. It's like, oh, you're excited, you think you can save the world. Everybody who comes, you can transform them, and it's so good to have that positive mindset. But it's a work that takes more than one person, meaning your client is the one that has to do the work along with you in
hmm
order for the transformation to take place. So if they're not in that point of doing that, one person doing all the work is not going to achieve the outcome that you or them may be striving for. So that is definitely a key point to remember.
Yes.
So if someone is thinking of being a mentor and helping somebody during this time, what um, first of all, do you need any help mentoring through your programs? And if they want to do that on a personal level, what would you recommend them start doing? Because a lot of people are challenged with just day to day activities. We have a lot more phone calls. I just got off the phone with my mom and I had to talk her through going to the grocery store because she's fearful
She's
and
anxious.
yeah, having afraid she's gonna have a panic attack just going to
hmm
the store.
hmm
So, what kind of things should we be mindful of coaching somebody? Maybe some tips or tools, through getting through this pandemic.
Well, I know this is going to sound crazy, Lachelle, but
Mhm.
one of the things that I would say is just because you want to be a mentor doesn't mean that you can be one.
Okay. Okay.
I know that sounds kind of ugly, but there are,
Mm-mm.
there are people who, just because I want to be a teacher doesn't mean, just because I can teach doesn't mean I need to be a teacher. You
Right.
gotta, because this is a very sensitive time. It's a
Mhm.
very sensitive time for people. It's a very fearful time for people.
Mhm.
And I talked to another young lady this morning, and I was listening, and she was, everything that she talked about was, she spoke it out of her fear. And
Mhm.
I was in one of the rooms, and I had her on speakerphone, because you know how sometimes we try to do things while we're talking to people.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
she was on speaker, and my daughter was getting ready to go to work, and my daughter just came by, and she looked, and my daughter, was like, she kind of whispered, she was like, tell her you'll call her back. And I said, and I just shook my head no, and I just listened. So, if you want to mentor, that's a great thing, because there's so many people who need so many things right now, can't get out
Mhm.
of the house, and we need somebody to talk to.
Mhm.
But make sure, first of all, make sure you examine yourself. And if you cannot,
Mhm.
I have a motto: if I can't hurt, I won't help. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, if I can't help, that was backwards. If I
Okay.
can't help, I won't hurt.
Okay. Okay.
um and sometimes when we're feeling some kind of way, and we're feeling, hurt and feeling fearful, it comes out in how we communicate
Mhm.
with others. So
Mhm.
be mindful that if you are in a position of, if you're hurting,
Mhm.
if you're psychologically or emotionally hurting, you know be very reluctant to try and mentor somebody, because trust me, it's going to come out,
Mhm.
and you're going to say some things, and put off some energy that you don't intend to put off, and that
Mhm.
could hurt instead of help.
I love that.
um,
That's good. Okay.
Another thing, if you want to mentor, um, examine what area you want to mentor in. A
Mhm.
lot of people are good to mentor, but they're not very good motivators.
Okay.
There are different aspects to mentoring. You can mentor somebody through diet and nutrition.
Mhm.
You can talk to them and mentor them into some good nutrition.
Mhm.
You can be an exercise mentor.
Mhm.
Give some tips on, how to keep moving during this time.
Mhm.
You can mentor a child as far as, in some schoolwork, in some, language arts
Mhm.
or math. There are different aspects of mentoring. Then there's the motivating, and
Mhm.
there's the encouraging, and there's the, like you did with your mom, walking her through the panic attack, like I did this morning with one young lady. Here are some tips. Here's some ways to get through the day. I am a proponent of writing. I'm a proponent of inspirational things. I am also a proponent of watching some mindless, funny stuff on TV. I don't like all of the, they have TV, they have language and all that. I don't like all that. But, I can get involved in some drama that will have you like, huh?
Mhm.
And before you know it, an hour has gone by and you haven't thought about what's going on in the world.
This is true. Yeah.
So there are different ways. Mainly during this time, sometimes when you want to mentor, sometimes you got to find somebody to mentor to you.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
when I do my programs, and I'm in the process of reinventing my programs because they were face to face. I'm an up close and personal person.
Mhm.
Like going into the schools. We take the program into the schools. We do programs, beauty redefined programs where we redefine beauty of young women from hair to toe. I am working on doing changing that to a virtual program, um,
Mhm.
to still do that, but it's virtual, and offering some tips and some live things on what to do, and how to redefine your beauty from hair to toe. Um, One of those things too is when I would, have my mentors to volunteer. Number one, it's a commitment, so you can't be willy nilly. You can't be in and out.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
virtual, you can't be in and out. They need to know that they can depend on you. Um,
Mhm.
as a mentor, as a communication coach, I have a responsibility because even when I am not feeling well, I have to put myself aside and meet the
Mhm.
needs of somebody else who needs me. Because I can,
Mhm.
I have mentors myself. People
Right.
who I can call and talk to, and I had a great conversation with you last week, and you gave me
Mhm.
so many great tips.
Mhm.
I have a dynamic support circle. I have prayer warriors. I have
Mhm.
friends that I call to talk through things and help
Mhm.
them talk through things. So it's needed.
Mhm.
With my mentors, I make sure, to see, I want to see where they are. I want to
Mhm.
see, in when you're working with young people, when you're mentoring, and you bring on a team, they have to have the same mindset.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
be talking two different languages.
Mhm.
Won't work.
Mhm.
Every mentor can't mentor the same. You have a child, or for instance, women. I have a women's group. All of the women are different, and they all have different needs. I have one woman who is very closed. She doesn't she when she if a tear shed, she's vulnerable. She doesn't like that. She doesn't like to cry. She doesn't like to
Mhm.
feel. And when we do our group, she has told me on more than one occasion, I'm not coming. I'm not coming to the group because I don't I you had me crying. I'm not coming. But she keeps coming. She's
Mm.
healing. And then you have one who, you can't have enough tissue next to her.
Mhm.
The tears are flowing, they're flowing, they're flowing, they're flowing, and she's healing. And then you have one who won't cry at all. She's
Mhm.
healing because she's thinking about those things, and it's causing her to go back and do the work, as Ayanna Van Zant would say, do your work.
Mm.
So you just have to know where you are. You have to understand that just because you want to be a mentor, you may not be
Mhm.
able to. You may not have that, and you may do more harm than good.
Mm.
And also know that what's your niche, for instance, what are you good at, and
Mhm.
going from there, and just being very, very careful no matter what you do, being very, very
Mhm.
careful. This is the time I have a friend, and we joke. sometimes, and I say, you got your eggshell shoes on. Do I need to go get my eggshell shoes? Can I, we need to stop over here at Kroger or at Walmart so I can give me a pair of eggshell shoes. This means you
Mhm.
got to tread lightly with people.
Mhm.
Sometimes a person who is very, very hardcore and nothing penetrates them during this pandemic,
Mhm.
everything is penetrating everybody,
Yeah.
even the strongest among us. So we just have to
So.
tread lightly no matter what we do in the area of mentoring, in the area of friendship, in the area of spouses communicating with each other, parents communicating with children, brother and sister, parents, the whole gamut.
Mhm. So true. I mean, you have given us so many good nuggets. I am really glad that we were able to have this conversation. Now, in conclusion, I know you have your books, and I'll be sure to put them through the comments as we post the broadcast. But what are some books that you could recommend, or a book that was kind of pivotal and helping you on your journey?
Um, that's a good question. I have, I have my own books, which are, my story and my motivation and inspiration book called Good Morning Friends. But I usually look at I write. I do
Mm,
journaling. I write about
mm-hmm,
my feelings and how I feel about things. But I also go through the Bible. I will take
mm-hmm,
words and my word for instance, the other day was on laughter. Um, I
mm,
I read through all of the scriptures on laughter and what it meant. I am also um, a self help kind of girl. I
mm-hmm.
love, love, love reading books on relationships. One of my favorite, books to read is the Chicken Soup for the Soul series of books.
Okay,
I have Chicken
okay.
Soup for the Teenage Soul because I work
Mm-hmm,
with teenagers, so I like for them to, have things like that. So I
mm-hmm,
give them, the Chicken Soup for the Teen Soul books. I
mm-hmm.
am right now. There's the I'm sure you're familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective.
Really effective people.
Right now,
Mm-hmm,
I'm looking at 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers.
mm-hmm.
There are so many. I'm actually sitting here looking at one of my bookshelves, and I need another bookshelf. Um, there's
Me too.
so many favorites. There's the Soul of My Sisters, and these are all books on examples of courage and
Mm-hmm,
motivation, and people who have come through some things, and people who have survived some hardships. So it's an
mm-hmm,
inspiration on if they can do it, I can do it.
mm-hmm,
There's another favorite, The Drowning of Ruth. It's all about the
mm,
story of Ruth. So some really good things to keep your mind going. My latest one is
mm-hmm,
Solve It with Salt. You know, what can I do with table
mm-hmm.
salt? And it's all about. And also, I read a book too, Seasoning Your Words, by one of my friends, Becky Blackman. Seasoning Your
Mm-hmm.
Words, and it's all about how we have to be very, very careful what we do with our words. There's that saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. I believe opposite. Sticks and stones, your
Absolutely.
bones will heal, but words that we
Mm-hmm.
say, it affects us for the rest of our life. You know,
Rest of our.
one thing before we end, I, I I like to teach young people and women too about who they are and loving who they are and self-esteem.
Mm-hmm,
You grow up, you have children, and I know you told your children they were all beautiful. You're beautiful. You're
mm-hmm,
you're 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 powerful. All those affirmations.
mm-hmm,
And from the
mm-hmm,
age from birth, from day one, your baby was beautiful. They were perfect.
mm-hmm,
Everything was perfect. And they're home for say to 5 years old, and they're perfect and they're beautiful. And then they go to daycare, and here
mm-hmm,
little Mary goes to daycare, and she's confident and she's beautiful because mommy and daddy have told her she's beautiful. And then she gets to daycare and she sees little Johnny with his little mean self because he hasn't been taught that. and he tells
Mhm.
pretty little Mary, "You ugly. Your nose is ugly. Your lips are big."
Mhm.
And little Mary spends the rest of her life trying to overcome that.
Mm.
And that's what the world does. Inside of our
Mhm.
homes, and everybody doesn't have that. Let me just preference that by saying everybody
Right,
doesn't have
right.
that, that stability, that family unit that's going to, mold them and tell them they're beautiful. But the ones that
Mhm.
do, they spend all that time, the parents have said they're beautiful, and they go out and society tells them that they're not, and they
Yes.
spend the rest of their lives trying to find that beautiful again through makeup,
Mhm.
through clothes, god forbid, some of our young people through drugs and alcohol, and it affects their
Mhm.
lives for the rest of their lives. So we have to be
Yes.
very, very careful the words that we use. We have to be very
Mhm.
careful when we try and mentor people, because we can throw them off the path that they're on.
Mhm. So true. So true. That is just awesome. I mean, some great nuggets. I hope everybody, you might have to go back and listen to this again. It was some good stuff. That's good. So I really want to thank you for your time and let everybody know the best way to get a hold of you.
You can email me at LaQuita at a
Mm-hmm.
failure, the number two, communicate dot that. It's LaQuita, LaQuita at
Mm-hmm.
a failure, the number two, communicate, communicate.com.
All right.
And
Well,
if you
we
want,
will
and I'm sorry, and if you want
go
to
ahead.
take a look at some of the programs that we offer, you can, check us out at www.afailure, the number two,
Mhm.
communicate.com.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm hoping everybody is taking this in and they can get into some of those programs and just the ways that you are. I think you had something about the 7 steps to communication or something.
Yes, I have a book called Seven Steps to Effective Communication. And you can
Yes.
look, in the next couple of weeks to see some information on a online virtual event on the
Mm-hmm.
7 steps to communication, effective communication. So we're going to walk through that.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are so glad we connected, and I'll definitely be in touch.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. You have a wonderful
You
day.
too. Bye bye.
What a wonderful conversation on the importance of effective communication. So many tips and golden nuggets. I hope you all got just as much value out of that as I did. Getting a little tongue tied here. So, want to thank you guys for listening. Please feel free to reach out to LaQuita if you feel led to talk to her about mentoring or just some tips for relating to some teenagers that may be in your family going through rough times as we kind of weather the storm of this pandemic that's affecting us across the world. Want to thank you guys for listening. If you are interested in being a guest and giving us some of your insight during these challenging times, please feel free to email me at info@lachelleatkins.com. You could also reach out to me through Facebook Messenger, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. I do also have a YouTube channel with many tips for businesses as well as parenting, so feel free to join me there as well. I want to thank you all for listening and have a wonderful day.